One star seemed to shine a little brighter than all the others in every galaxy of stars. In show business, we refer to this phenomena as a superstar. Tonight we pay tribute to such a superstar, a very special award to a very special lady. She is the only female singer ever to have 4 #1 records in the entire history of Billboard magazine. She enjoys the biggest audience a performer has ever had when she sang the Oscar-nominated song Theme from Mahogany, live from the streets of Amsterdam, Holland, via satellite on the Academy Awards show, which was beamed to virtually every nation on the globe. She has also received an Academy Award nomination as Best Actress in her very first film, Lady Sing the Blues. She broke the first week all-time Broadway box office record in her second film, Mahogany. She established an all-time in-person box office record in the 63 history of the New York legendary Palace Theater. She's been honored at the Cannes Film Festival, the Venice Music Festival, and by England's music industry. As a solo artist for a group, she is responsible for the sale of more records than any other female singer. Tonight, she is being honored by her peers.
Welcome to Industry TV Network. Make sure you hit the like button, share, and subscribe. This is Motown Chronicles, Part 15. Diana Ross has never had many female friends. She has said that she's never felt a need to have girlfriends in show business. This attitude may be a holdover from the days when Berry Gordy used to discourage her from having such relationships. Once when asked about her idol, Barbra Streisand, she had to admit that she had only admired her from afar, because Barbara gives the impression of being untouchable. The two of them have been at the same cocktail parties, but have only made eye contact and have never had a full conversation. Diana and Suzanne de Passe have remained friends over the years, but it's a relationship that seems mostly based on what Diana needs, what Diana wants, and how Diana feels. One day, Diana was depressed about a business problem and complained to Suzanne about all of the things she felt she couldn't achieve because she hadn't gone to college. This was certainly ironic, considering what her father had wanted for her. "Bullshit," Suzanne said. "You're one of the smartest women I know. It has nothing to do with going to college. That's your cop-out." Diana must have been surprised when Suzanne continued, "That's how you run away from things you don't want to deal with." Ross had to admit that de Passe was right. "I never had a girlfriend as close as her," she said later. "I cherish the relationship and hope it will always be there. I wish I would have had a relationship like that with Marion Florence. Diana also claimed to have a close friendship with Cher. I can be close with her and talk with her and it's straight. There's no shit. She calls you dirty names. A terrific lady, Diana had said in 1976. Cher is always honest and frank and seems completely unaffected by her success. Cher was also fun and fearless, which Diana liked about her. She and Diana were complete opposites. Diane became friendly with Cher during a lull in Cher's career after her initial television series and before her movie success, a time when Diana's career was thriving. There were some good times during their 5-year friendship. Once, Diana and Bob and Cher's then boyfriend, David Geffen, were joined by Bette Midler and Elton John in New York, where they all went to see a performance of Grease together. This was unusual because according to Cher, Diana and Bette did not get along. So I go out with one or the other of them, but never both of them together. When they left for some fresh air during intermission, half the patrons followed to gawk at them. The people were pouring down from the balconies, David Geffen recalled. The second act was 30 minutes late because of the madness. After the show, they went dancing in gay discos, drawing a lot of attention. All of these divas in silver sequins and spangles, one fan said. The guys were throwing themselves at their feet, touching and feeling them to make certain the whole thing wasn't an apparition. Guess who got the biggest attention, Diana asked. My husband. She remembered the men on the dance floor reaching between his legs and grabbing him. Now you cut that out, Diana said, pushing one overzealous admirer away. That's mine. When Diana and Cher would drag Bob and David on shopping sprees for shoes, it was always a major production. The four of them would pile out of a limousine, dash into an expensive shoe store, and then as the fellows watched, the ladies proceeded to try on every shoe in the shop. Soon, the chauffeur would be sent for sandwiches. When he returned, everyone ate right there in the store. After lunch, the couples would argue about who should pay for the shoes and how they can best be deducted from their taxes as business expenses. Diana and Cher would swap secrets about baby nurses and the problems they had raising children and maintaining their careers. When Cher's daughter Chastity was sick in the hospital with a 105-degree temperature and Diana was on the road, Bob sat up all night with her in the hospital. I don't know what to do, where to go, Cher would complain to Diana, because she considered her to be an excellent mother. She's always complaining, that Cher, Diana would say. She's a tragedy queen for sure. Diana needs her kids, Cher has said. They're her rock, her anchor. Only her children can cure that special loneliness. And don't let all that noise around her fool you. She's got the lonelies too. You can't be that big and escape them. Some of the problems in Diana's relationship with Cher may seem slight in retrospect, but would cause dissension just the same. In one of her nightclub acts, Cher decided to have 3 female impersonators portray herself, Diana, and Bette. When Diana saw the act in Las Vegas, she wasn't so much concerned with the impersonation as she was horrified to find that the performer was wearing an almost exact replica of one of her most treasured Bob Mackie gowns. You would think she'd have enough taste to not rip off my clothes, Diana said after the show. I paid a lot of money for that goddamn dress, and now how am I going to be able to wear it? Back in August 1979, Cher hosted a surprise birthday party for her latest boyfriend, rock star Gene Simmons. I'm just crazy about Cher, Gene said at the time. Just nuts about her. She's my favorite love. My first love. At the party, Cher introduced Diana to Gene. Diana found him fascinating. He was intelligent, and to her way of thinking, extremely sexy. In May 1980, Cher celebrated her 34th birthday. As Cher tells it, Gene was undecided about what kind of birthday gift he should buy for her, and she suggested he take Diana along. She knows what I like, Cher said. Soon Diana and Gene were romantically involved. With commendable restraint, Cher made no public comments. Diana insisted that Cher and Gene had already ended their relationship when she became involved with him, and that her friendship with Cher didn't suffer as a result of what had happened. I can call her up and complain to her when I think Gene is being ridiculous, she said. Apparently, Cher didn't hold any grudge. She paid Gene special thanks on an album she released at that time, crediting him with helping switch her over from disco to rock and roll. It didn't take her any time at all to find a new boyfriend, Les Dudek, another rock musician. What's wrong with swapping boyfriends? Cher asked writer George Haddad Garcia. After I found what a man is like, why not let another girl have him? Diana's romance with Cher's hand-me-down, who was 5 years her junior, proved tumultuous. It lasted off and on for about 3 years. Simmons is a member of the shock rock group Kiss, which at the time was known for its bizarre stage makeup. On stage, he dressed like a fire-breathing, vampire-costumed ghoul and was known for the way he would lap his snake-like tongue at his audiences. "My tongue is long enough to make your girlfriend leave you and come with me," he once told a reporter. He wore 12-inch high platform boots, each shaped like a demon's mouth, complete with the bladed teeth. Part of the gimmick meant the group was never seen in public without its makeup, so whenever the guys would venture out into the world, it would be with handkerchiefs covering the lower halves of their faces. Simmons, a former 6th grade school teacher, is 6'2" with a ruddy face, deep dark eyes, and thick black hair. Despite his image, he didn't smoke, drink, or do drugs. He claimed that he has never once been high or drunk, and that the only time he ever sipped wine is during Passover services. Gene Simmons was born in Haifa, Israel. "What a nice Jewish boy he is," observed Diana, who says that she takes a strong position against drugs. Simmons is also a brilliant and confident businessman and rock and roll merchandiser. Diana said she admired the way he was able to pinpoint any problem and deal with it. She would confide in Gene regarding her problems at Motown, and he would always offer the same advice. "Get the hell away from there. What are you, nuts?" He acted as though he didn't think she was particularly bright or strong-minded. "If this business hasn't made you tough, especially working for Motown, then forget it," she would counter. "All the S in the world won't help you." Even though Simmons didn't have as much money as she had, and she had sworn that after Ryan O'Neal, she would not get involved with men who had less money than she, Diana was hopelessly attracted to him. Dating Simmons could not have helped Diana's image. He is extremely sexist, considers women to be nothing more than objects, and is known for his scrapbooks containing pictures of over 3,000 women with whom he says he has slept with. He enjoys taking pictures of them in the act with his SX70 camera. It's become part of the lovemaking ritual. If one goes hunting and never takes a picture of the trophy, what good is it? He asked. By now, Berry Gordy must have realized that Diana was dating some of these men partly to defy him. "I don't even care anymore," he had said. I don't care who she makes a fool of herself over. I've just had it with her. Most people at Motown felt that Gene Simmons, a man who once said he wanted his epitaph to read, "What are you doing tonight?" was not the right fellow for Diana Ross. But he is completely different in private life, she insisted. He is so gentle, not at all like the monster he looks like on stage. The more she heard of the company's outrage, the deeper she threw herself into the relationship. Diana was determined to keep her affair with Simmons out of the public eye. One wonders how Simmons felt about this, because when he was dating Cher, he got a lot of mileage out of it, and even a People magazine cover. But there was never a word in the press about the blossoming Ross/Simmons affair, and certainly no cover stories. Diana was friendly with Victoria Principal at that time, and was never able to understand how Victoria could accept so much press coverage about her relationship with singer Andy Gibb, who was quite a few years younger than her. One day, Diana sat in her office with a secretary, reading a magazine feature about Principal and Gibb. "Oh, that Vicky, she just loves those little boys," she said, laughing. "But why must she let everyone know it?" Later, she insisted, "I know that my fans want to know who I'm sleeping with, but it's none of their business. It's really not." Soon, though, Gene was said to have convinced Diana that his affair with Cher did nothing to hurt her, Cher's career, so why the big secret? Eventually, Diana became more open about the romance, but still, there would be no features. Gene Simmons was the great love of her life, insisted John Mackey, who had worked as a paralegal at Loeb & Loeb, the law firm that represents Diana Ross. He was staying at her Beverly Hills home while Diana was in New York. It was said around the office that it was hot, passionate sex between them, but they would fight all the time. And I recall that when Diana would come into town, she would stay at the Beverly Hills Hotel rather than at the house with Gene. So in effect, he was living in her house while she was staying at a hotel. It was an odd love affair. By the summer of 1980, Diana and Gene were in full throes of passionate romance. He was following her around like an obedient puppy, as Kiss tried to work out its tour schedules to suit Diana. She was busy promoting what would turn out to be her biggest solo album at Motown, Diana, produced by Bernard Edwards and Nile Rodgers of the group Chic. Between 1976 and 1978, Edwards and Rodgers had revolutionized the sound of disco music with their unique sound, striking guitar riffs, and vigorous female voices, all hued with multiple keyboards and the strong string orchestration. The duo had produced a number of hits for Chic: Dance, 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 Yowzy, Yowzy, Yowza, and Everybody Dance, and then went on to work with Sister Sledge, We Are Family, and He's the Greatest Dancer. As producers, they had developed their own personal and very identifiable sound. But when work on the Diana album was completed, Diana decided the material sounded too much like Edwards and Rodgers, and not enough like Ross. After reviewing the final mixes, she sent the masters back to producers with suggestions on how she would like to have the music remixed. They probably thought she was just being temperamental. After all, what did she know about mixing? They placated her with a slightly altered version of the album. She still wasn't satisfied. When they suggested she go into the studio and do whatever she wanted to do with the record, she actually did it. Motown recording engineer Russ Tarana remixed the entire album. "I was shocked," Nile Rodgers said. I was furious and got on the phone right away and called Motown. There wasn't much Rogers could do, however. Diana's mind was made up that Toronto's mixes were better. I proceeded to make the record more Diana Ross and far less chicish, she said. Besides, they've only been in the business, 2 years? I believe my 20 years experience in show business would be of great value to the project. Rogers and Edwards demanded that a disclaimer be added to all trade advertisements purchased by Motown, crediting Ross and Toronto with the new mixes. After it was completed, Diana began to have second thoughts about the album, and Motown's promotional staff thought it was certainly going to be a failure. But, as is often the case in the record business, the first single appealed to the buying public. Despite the fact that Upside Down seems like a nursery rhyme set to disco music, she told Rogers and Edwards that she wanted songs her children could sing, and that's precisely what she got. It was a huge hit, #1 for over a month and nominated for a Grammy. The follow-up, I'm Coming Out, a much better, more challenging record, went to #5. Gay discos promoted it as a dance theme of self-expression and acceptance. I'm Coming Out also seemed to convey another more obvious personal message from Diana Ross, who was definitely coming out from under Berry Gordy's thumb and having great success with it. As well, if this album was any indication, Diana was certified platinum and is considered one of the biggest selling albums in her career. The album's success seems ironic because it was one of her least exciting ones. Most of her performances were weak, uninspired, and mechanical. To me they weren't, but the music sounded hot and driving, which apparently wasn't enough for her many fans. The album peaked at #2 on the national sales chart. #1 was held by, of all people, Barbra Streisand and her Guilty album. The Gene Simmons romance continued throughout the summer. I have a wonderful relationship, she said in an interview with Woman's World. It's really a most unusual scene for me. We met as people, not as performers. We find it difficult to find time to spend together since we both work hard most of the year. And when I go out to events like award ceremonies and I want Gene to come along, he can't because it's a big deal about his face. When she appeared at Caesars in Vegas that June, Gene came with her. The women in Ross's entourage probably didn't feel safe when he was there, but the guys got along famously with Gene because, as one musician put it, he was a hell of a nice guy, a real man's man. Diana's ex-husband, Bob Silverstein, and his new wife, Susan, were also in Las Vegas as her guests. Bob wanted to spend time with the children. He and Gene seemed friendly to one another. It's so wonderful that we're all so wrapped up together, Diana said. People who know her, though, say that the more Diana thought about her divorce from Bob, the more she regretted it. She had even told Bob's wife that she still loved him, and I just hope you don't mind. Diana now felt that perhaps she and Bob should have worked their way through the bad times in their marriage. We only had one bad year, she was saying. No one was certain if she was referring to their first one together or their fifth and last. In her nightclub act, Diana introduced Remember Me with the line, I wouldn't change a thing. Well, maybe one thing. She confided to one longtime associate that one thing was her divorce from Bob. I really do regret it, she said. I think that perhaps I made a mistake letting him go. Diana didn't think that Bob would remarry so quickly. It was barely a year and a half after their divorce that he took a new wife. She wasn't used to being quite so dispensable in anyone's life, least of all Bob Silverstein's, but she's the one who ended the marriage, noted one of Bob's friends. I think she took comfort in the fact that the children would still tie her to Bob. In the middle of the Vegas engagement, Diana and Gene traveled together to Colorado Springs for a day, accompanied by 15 members of her entourage, all aboard 3 private jets, where she taped the Bob Hope special at the Air Force Academy. They arrived at 5 in the morning, checked into the Sheridan Motor Inn, and left instructions not to be disturbed. Diana had 2 guards stationed in front of the door to ensure their privacy. 6 hours later, Diana and Gene emerged for her rehearsal in matching his and her outfits: black leather pants, boots, and white silk shirts. For her performance of Reach Out and Touch, Diana wanted to wear a low-cut backless orange sequined gown, which was in Los Angeles. It had to be shipped to Colorado Springs, and to ensure that it would be handled with care, Diana purchased a seat for it on a Western Airlines flight. Many of the airline employees seemed to be anticipating the arrival of Miss Ross's dress, as if being near the gown was as momentous as being near the star herself. When someone from her office checked the outfit in the ticket counter, the agent could barely fill out the boarding pass. She was so taken by the moment. "Oh my, is this it?" she gushed. "Is this really Diana Ross's dress?" During the taping, Diana, with hair pulled back and cascading down her back, performed her numbers to the enraptured servicemen and women. Gene sat in the performer's tent, transfixed by her image on the television monitor. No one knew who he was, and when someone asked why he was so interested in her performance, he pointed at Diana and said, "'Cause that's my lady." "We have an agreement, Gene and I," Diana insisted at the time. "He's not fooling around, and I'm not fooling around." It doesn't seem that Gene Simmons kept his end of the agreement. He's never been known to be monogamous. "I am aware that the whole time he was sleeping with Diana, he was dating other women," said a woman who worked for Diana Ross. "I'm also aware that she didn't know. Maybe what they say in Hollywood is true. Nothing succeeds in the world like a little deception." Once when Diana and Gene were dining in a Manhattan restaurant, Gene saw a shapely blonde woman he apparently knew sitting by herself. When Diana went to the ladies' room, Gene went to the other lady and struck up a conversation. Suddenly, he kissed her fully on the lips in front of everyone in the bistro, and then, using an eyeliner pencil she'd pulled from her purse, he jotted something on a matchbook cover. He kissed her again, got up, and went to his own table just as Diana returned. She apparently had no idea about what had happened. She beamed as he rose to help her with her chair. Diana may have tried to be oblivious to Gene's indiscretions at first, but it didn't take her long to figure out what was going on. Soon she wanted him by her side every single minute, Michael Brown said in an interview. And that's not Gene's style. Diana started getting very jealous and at one point went out and hunted him down in the middle of the night. He was out romping with the boys. He got pissed, stuck her in a cab, and sent her home. But as always in her relationships with men, Diana was determined to make this guy her own. It is ironic that such powerful and successful women like Diana Ross and Cher would want to associate with a man who would go to bed with almost any woman. A man can have a girlfriend and be devoted to her and still have 100 lovers on the side, Gene Simmons reasoned. That's perfectly acceptable behavior, I think. With such a harem, Diana and Gene would often encounter one of his many girlfriends, usually aspiring actresses working as sales clerks. Gene would be very friendly and Diana would storm off in a huff. Many of these women attest to the fact that Simmons is, as one of them put it, the consummate lover. She added, "No way could Diana resist being under his influence. He could make any woman happy." Knowing Gene, that romance has to be based on great sex. In September, Diana Ross followed Gene Simmons and Kiss to England. She had never seen him perform and wanted to see what his stage persona was like. Now, she was a glorified groupie. While there, she held a press conference at the Inn on the Park Hotel in London. In order to discuss, observed British writer Danny LeBaker, well, nobody was actually sure of that. Diana was described by Fleet Street journalists as the famed girlfriend of Gene Simmons. During the press reception, she was presented with a platinum record for Diana. "So what do you think of Kiss's music?" one reporter asked. "I like all forms of music, so I'm not stuck for having to give an opinion about Gene," Diana said. "Well, what did you think of their show at Wembley?" "I was mostly backstage, so I don't know." "Do you think we can discuss Miss Ross's exciting new movie projects?" piped in a Tamla Motown representative, trying to move the questions away from Kiss. Diana was still trying to mount the Josephine Baker project at Paramount, but had reached an impasse. She wanted to produce it herself, and the studio felt she didn't have enough experience to be able to handle that responsibility. If she was going to England to be with Gene Simmons, Diana would have been better served by keeping a low profile. As it was, she had no theatrical business there except to tape an episode of The Muppet Show. After the press conference, New Musical Express ran a photograph of Diana with the caption, "Unveiling of the Kiss Army mascot." "Why is she here?" one of Gene Simmons' fellow band members asked. "'Cause I love her," Gene replied. As passionate as the romance may have been in private, publicly, Miss Ross demanded respect. In the past, Gene used to grab his girlfriends' behinds or tweak their breasts. There would be none of that with Diana Ross. She may have been a groupie, but she drew the line at public humiliation. Gene told one of his fellow band members, "Can't grab her ass whenever I feel like it. She'd kill me. She's a real lady." "Well then," said the musician, "what the hell is she doing with you?" This is the end of the Motown Chronicles Part 15. See you guys soon.